Joined us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Pegah Fudd. I'm Executive Director for First 5 Marin. And before we jump in, I just want to remind you all that on the bottom, there is a global icon for interpretation. If you'd like to listen in on this event in a different language, in Spanish, you can choose that language below.
Edgardo, do you want to go ahead and say that in Spanish?
Yeah, para interpretación en español, seleccione el icono del globo del mundo para elegir el idioma que desea escuchar para esta reunión. Está alojado abajo en la pantalla.
Wonderful. So again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. This morning, we're here to learn more about housing in Marin County, and this forum is hosted by First 5 Marin in partnership with a number of other organizations. But First 5 Marin is an organization. We're an independent government agency that really focuses on early childhood, so our 0 to 5 population in Marin County. And our vision is every child in Marin County will thrive in supportive families and communities that nurture their greatest potential. And so it is very clear the connection to and the importance of housing. And so that's why we're here this morning and supporting this conversation and hoping that more action can come from it with our collective interests and passions.
You know, stop me if things are not working, but we're going to start where we're talking about what the housing element is. We're going to talk about the interaction between fair housing and the housing element, and then go through some of our outreach and programs and policies. And this is really focused on the unincorporated county, but a lot of it is applicable within cities and towns. So all of us have the same requirements, and many of the policies and barriers that we're facing are similar. Aline, are things not working? No? Okay. So just in the spirit of everything, sorry. So the housing element is part of every community in California's general plan, which kind of guides how they develop and plan for a number of issues, including housing. And the housing element has to be updated every 8 years. And it's a little different than other parts where the state has really taken an interest in it, because housing is a broad issue that affects the whole state, but then decisions are made at the local level. So the state reviews and has to certify everybody's housing element or housing plan. And they're all due for adoption by January of next year. And as I mentioned, what we're talking about is the unincorporated county, but every city, town, and county in California is having to go through the same process, although they have different adoption deadlines, but everybody in California has the same as us. So the amount of housing that guides our process is called the regional housing need allocation. And for the county as a whole, including all the cities and towns, we need to plan for over 14,000 new homes. And the unincorporated share of that is 3,500. And just to kind of put that in context, it seems like a lot because it's a lot more than we had last time. But if we think about the need, it probably doesn't feel like a lot. And Marin County only has a little over 3% of the Bay Area's total housing need that has been established. So that is guiding how we're planning for housing, those numbers. The housing element is made up of a number of different parts of it. It starts with the needs assessment, where we really we start with demographic trends, look at our housing market trends, and we look at special needs. For example, in our community, looking at housing for seniors, looking at housing for people who are experiencing homelessness, or for farm workers, or some examples of those special needs, folks with disabilities also. The affirmatively furthering fair housing is a new requirement that really needs to affect every aspect of the housing element. And Liz is going to talk about that in more detail in just a minute. Our sites inventory is where we plan for all of those housing units that I mentioned. And then the programs and policies are related to all aspects of both housing and the goals of affirmatively furthering fair housing. And so that's really what we want to spend some time on thinking about. We've been talking about this housing element for a long time. Many of you are probably really familiar with this presentation, with the structure of the housing element. So we want to talk about like what happens afterwards. So we're going to spend some time on that, particularly focusing on the first 2 years of the planning cycle. So as we're planning for housing, as I mentioned, we need to identify specific sites where the zoning is in place and it has all of the infrastructure that's needed to accommodate housing. And you can see that we have done that throughout the unincorporated part of the county. And this is just a graphic that show that we are really in line with the goals of fair housing, that we're planning for housing in all of our communities. And also recognizing that that's the need, and that's what we've heard about from, in the needs assessment. We heard that there was really need for housing at all income levels in all parts of our community. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz.
Thanks, Lily. Okay, and you can go to the next slide, thanks. So one of the biggest changes in this cycle's housing element is the requirement that we affirmatively further fair housing. And generally speaking, affirmatively furthering fair housing means we must take deliberate action to explicitly address, combat, and relieve disparities resulting from past and current patterns of segregation, and to foster and proactively encourage more inclusive communities. As part of our strategy to address historic discrimination practices, while also increasing opportunities for true fair housing choice, we must go beyond what we've previously done, and we must ensure that we are developing strategies that are meaningful and impactful for the people who are most directly affected by those strategies. That includes hearing from people who have historically not been part of conversations about housing and who have not always been at the table regarding housing decisions. Those populations include people of color, people with disabilities, seniors, low-income residents, agricultural families, particularly in the unincorporated area, families with children, are many renters, and people experiencing homelessness. This requirement highlights the need to ensure that our programs and our policies are deliberate and reflect what we've heard directly from our communities. Next slide, Lily. One of the things that I always point out when I talk about the housing element is, we are actually planning housing for the future. Frankly, the housing isn't going to be built for me. To be honest, it just takes so long to do it. But because of that, we've got to make sure that we have people who are helping to frame and create housing policy at our table. That includes young people. That includes people who aren't necessarily in positions of power right now here. Our housing sites must create opportunities in high resourced areas and can't just concentrate housing in areas of low income residents or areas of concentrated poverty. We have to create programs and policies that address the challenges faced by those underserved communities. And those programs must reflect what we've heard from communities, what we've been told by our communities, and what specifically we're planning to do to address those challenges and barriers. And while the county has already submitted its draft housing element, there are still opportunities, including this one, to engage residents and communities to create and impact the future housing here in Marin County. Lily?
Thank you, Liz. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the needs assessment that we did and what we heard when we did that public outreach that Liz talked about as required in the housing element and through our goals of affirmatively furthering fair housing. So just to put it in context, in the unincorporated county, we have a limited supply of we have limited housing options, which really one of the goals of fair housing is really to have housing choice. And in many ways, we don't have that because most of our homes, over 80% of them, are single unit homes. So that limits choice for many folks. And as many of us know, we have an aging population. About more than 20% of our residents are over 65. We have a significant number of cost burdened households, particularly renters, and a much higher proportion of renters who are living in overcrowded housing situations compared to owners. And one thing that we saw during the pandemic was the impact of living in overcrowded situations and how that can really impact a community. And some of the methods that we used for outreach, we did a survey that we had a lot of response to. We did focus groups with specific populations to make sure that their voices were heard. And we did a variety of community workshops. Most of them were like this through Zoom, given that we launched this during the pandemic. Many of the themes that we heard were that limited availability of affordable units. So that's no surprise to most folks in the community. There wasn't enough information about county programs, which is something that we really need to step up on. Housing obviously is too expensive. There was discrimination by some of our housing providers. And there's barriers to develop housing and second units, also not surprising. And that we needed more support to attain home ownership, particularly for renters and people of color. So some of the policies and programs that we are going I'll talk about some of the policies and programs that we are proposing to address some of what we heard. And before that, just at a high level, I'm always getting confused with the difference between these. So a goal is really a statement that's describing a future condition. The policy is a statement that guides a specific action. And then the program is really what's implementing it and carries out those goals and policies. So the goals of our policies and programs are to provide opportunities for a variety of housing choices that align with those goals of affirmatively furthering fair housing, to develop affordable housing, particularly for those at lower incomes. Given that our incomes are so high in this county, often housing that's affordable at 60 or 80% of the median income is too high for many of our households. So really making sure that we are reaching and providing housing for folks at all income levels. We'll be removing barriers to housing and improving conditions of existing housing and preserving that existing housing. So a lot of the work around that affirmatively furthering fair housing is preventing displacement and ensuring that people have adequate living situations. Some of the program topics, I think that we've touched on these already. In addition to the ones I touched on, there's some programs that are specific to special needs housing and some programs aligned with state law that are required in our housing element. So one of the things that we hear a lot about, particularly in the west part of the county, is the impact of short-term rentals, and that those are taking housing out of the residential, making housing that was available for renters and turning it into a commercial use. And so we'll be looking at addressing that. One of the things that we also saw was a high vacancy, and that many of those homes are being used for vacation homes and not, they're impacting our housing shortage and not contributing. And so many communities around the Bay Area have been looking at this vacant home tax, and that's something that would be we'll be looking at also. Some ways that we're increasing our housing stock, looking at accessory dwelling units as one of those ways. We also really need to focus on providing unit housing. And so that will be one of the things that we're proposing to do, is really making sure that our sites that are zoned for multi-unit housing, that's what develops on them. And some of our programs around fair housing really focus on those tenant protections and anti-displacement that I talked about. So one of the things that we heard loud and clear was the impact of rent increases on our renters, and making sure that we've expanded our just cause for eviction program to both align with the state law and provide some protections, including relocation costs, etc. Making sure that tenants' voices were lifted up, and having a tenant commission to do that, to weigh in on policy discussions in a more active way, and establishing a right to purchase and return. So when properties come up for sale, that tenants have more protection around that. And again, increasing homeownership opportunities for renters. Some of the special needs programs we are looking at are really focused around seniors and providing more housing choice in those areas. We'll also be farm workers in the west part of our community continue to experience, limited housing options and poor conditions. And so we'll be looking at increasing that supply. Improving accessibility in our existing housing is another area that we'll be focusing on. Having reasonable accommodation and expedited review if that's needed. And so these are all part of our goals around improving access for housing for folks with disabilities. In addition, around people who are experiencing homelessness, looking at other options for home key. There's another round of funding that's going to come along. And so looking at a variety of housing choices in this field also. There's a couple of things that we have to do under state law. So there's some, in some cases, our housing will be allowed by right. And what that means, it just is an expedited process. It doesn't go through the same kind of lengthy approval process that normally goes through. And those are part of the programs that we have to do, is in addition to streamlining and incentivizing homes that are affordable to lower income. So the first year, the programs that we're going to be focusing on next year, once we get through this housing element adoption process, are those tenant protection strategies. That's one of the main things that we'll be focusing on next year. Water, of course, is an issue that many of us have at the front of our mind with the ongoing droughts that we'll be experiencing. And so working in collaboratively with our water districts to make sure that there is water available. And looking at this religious and institutional facility housing overlay, there's a new program at the state that is really encouraging religious institutions to provide housing. And so we're going to be working on that, as well as supporting the Project Home Key as one of the first things out the year. So we're going to have a busy year, it looks like, next year. The following year, some of the programs that are going to be focused on comprehensive review of zoning and planning policies, which is a little wonky sounding, but one of the things that you may have heard Liz talk about in the past is that racially restrictive covenants, and there's language that is similar to that in many of our codes and our plans that we have that really include that language around protecting the character of community, or other language that is based in a discriminatory and segregation patterns. And so we'll be looking at that language as an example. And then the vacant home tax is another example of something that's going to be on our work plan for 2024. So just high level, we got our comments back. We submitted our draft to the state in July. We got our comments back. We're addressing those. And we have a workshop with our board on December 6th to finalize our sites list. And then January will be some hearings with the board and planning commission to adopt. With that, I'm going to stop sharing, and now we're going to move to hear from a number of folks about just housing issues throughout the community. And everyone is going to have about 3 to 5 minutes because we have a number of people speaking. So I'm going to start just calling people up alphabetically. And we'll give you a time warning when you're at 4 minutes, just so that you can wrap things up. So we're going to start with Mike Blakely from Marin Economic Forum. Mike.
Thank you, Lily, and good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for having me as a participant here. Again, my name is Mike Blakely, and I'm the CEO of the Marin Economic Forum. We are a 501c3 public benefit organization that focuses on research and advisory of the Marin County and Bay Area economy. As such, we don't advocate for issues or take positions on legislation. We focus on the economy. And so, of course, housing is an issue that you cannot ignore if you're looking at the economy, even if you're not taking positions on it. So with the short amount of time I had today, I thought I would talk a little bit about what we see in the plan and this notion in the title of this program of what comes next. First, I want to start by congratulating the county for completing this plan. It is a massive effort. We are a data-based organization, so I can appreciate all of the work that went into capturing this. And I'll use the opportunity to really recommend that for those that haven't had a chance to read through the plan, to really look at Section 2, which is the needs assessment that Lily mentioned previously, because that does an excellent job of really showing what the scope of the issue is, and just the challenges and constraints that we are dealing with. But it also creates just a few narratives that lead us sort of to the wait and see if this housing plan gets in place and what comes next. And so I just want to touch on a couple of those narratives that jumped out to me. The first one is we all know that housing is very expensive and there's affordability issues here. I don't know that the community really appreciates the depth of that. And so there's a table in Section 2 that talks about housing affordability, and it looks at it based on what's called the area median income. This is a key statistic that the county must use when it starts to look at how it's allocating housing. So if you look at that table, the one thing that jumps out to me is at the highest income level, which is 120% of the area median income. So basically $200,000 for a household of 5 people. At that income level, a best practice affordability priced house, and I mean that is a decent down payment and nothing like a cash gift that would reduce the price of the house. And the household with an income level of $200,000 should be able to afford a home with a price of $705,000. That is, according to best practices, also using 30% of your income for your housing costs. Okay. Now, we all know that there aren't many homes in Marin County priced at that level, but you can see it again in the data that the county presents by looking at the average home values of homes in just the unincorporated area. And you will find when you look at that table, which I think it's table 25, you'll find that there are no homes in all of the unincorporated area of Marin County with a value of less than $1 million. And in fact, most of them are between 1.5 to 1.7 million. And that was in 2020. And I can assure you, since we monitor this very closely, those prices have gone up significantly since 2020, as much as 20 to 25%. So the narrative in Marin, which is well known, is that lower income or even middle income residents have a hard time securing housing. But I think what we see in this data here is that even those that have an income with as much as $200,000 are going to have a very hard time affording anything. So this means going forward, what exactly is it that we're going to build? So Lily in her presentation didn't give the breakdown of what the 3,600 units would be. But I can say that about half of those units are slated for homes that would be purchased with income levels of moderate to above moderate income. So let's say $75,000 and up. Now that is really important because about half of the workers in unincorporated Marin County have salaries of about $75,000 or up. And most of those are higher than that, of course. But so the housing allocation in this plan matches the income levels of the workers in unincorporated Marin County. And I think that's really important because going forward, we all know how difficult it is to build affordable and below market rate housing. So the fact that half of what's allocated to be built in Marin County is for those of income levels at or above median income level means there's probably a better likelihood that those units will actually get built. And this is really important from our perspective, because at the end of the day, we want to see more housing get built because we know that that's necessary. The second thing, and I know I have a short amount of time, so looking
We're
forward.
at 5 minutes, just so you know. So I feel
Right.
like we'll wrap it
So looking forward, we also think there's going to need to be better job creation. So one of the challenges we have here in Marin County is we actually don't have as many jobs as residents that need them. And so most of you have heard about how hard it is for employers to find workers. That's really limited to the lower income jobs. Though we have too many low income jobs in Marin County, and we're not doing a good enough job at creating middle to higher wage jobs that would ease the affordability issue. So we think in addition to building units, we need to focus on job creation for middle and higher wage jobs here to allow our residents that are here right now to move up the economic ladder in terms of their incomes and be able to better secure housing. So I know I'm at time. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I look forward to the other comments.
Great. Thank you for that perspective. And thanks for looking at our needs assessment so closely. Now I'd like to invite Aaron Burnett. Are you here, Aaron?
I am, Lily. Thank
Great.
you. Yeah, I'm Aaron Burnett. I'm the Director of Policy and Civic Engagement at Canal Alliance. We're a champion of immigrant rights and work towards ending the generational cycle of poverty for the Latino immigrant community in Marin. I'm really happy to go after Mike because I'm not an economist, so I appreciate all those numbers, Mike. I do want to kind of note though, regarding the creation of new and better paying jobs is a wonderful idea, but I think it's important that we don't lose sight also on the fact that we still need to house our restaurant workers, our gardeners, our teachers. And so what I'm going to talk about is, well, first, let me say, we do really appreciate that the county has done a lot of community engagement in their process of creating this housing element, and a lot of recommendations that came from CBOs were actually implemented into the draft, and we're very happy to see that, and it's a great start. But the immediate potential for mass displacement of our lower income and vulnerable communities is real, and so without losing sight of the long-term goal of eventually developing a sufficient housing stock to house all of our residents, it's really important for all of us in this room to coalesce around the issue of renters protections to make sure that we don't lose our current residents before the new housing is available or before rents are able to go down as a result of more stock in the market. It's not a county issue necessarily because it's within San Rafael, but many of you may have seen an article recently about 400 Canal apartment complex in the Canal in San Rafael. You know, there's over 100 units there. The city of San Rafael has acted to make sure that all the laws are being followed, but at the end of the day, even if the new developer who came in and wants to upgrade all these units follows the law, a large portion of the current residents who have been there in some cases for longer than I've been alive face the real potential of being displaced. So when it comes to the near-term goals in protecting the Latino immigrant community and also other aspects of our vulnerable community, it's really important that we maintain focus and keep putting pressure on local municipalities to put in place those ordinances that are going to keep people in their homes as we do the good work in identifying new potential housing developments. And I know I'm not at time, so I'm going to keep it short, give some others more time to speak. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you, Aaron, and thanks for that perspective. I think it's really important, ties into the goals around affirmatively furthering fair housing that are around anti-displacement and protecting your existing communities. So thank you for that perspective. With that, I'm going to turn it to Mayor Stephanie Hellman. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Stephanie Hellman. I'm currently serving as the mayor in Fairfax, and I'm really honored to be included in this panel today. Many of you know, in Fairfax, after a lengthy 8 months or so process, including 7 public forums, on November 2nd, the Fairfax Town Council passed stronger just cause eviction protections and rent stabilization. And I want to be really clear, I don't consider myself an expert on housing or tenant protections. In fact, a year ago, I probably couldn't put 2 sentences together about existing renter protections. But what I do know how to do is analyze data and get an understanding from experts on what trends and dynamics are occurring in our communities, from people like Lucy Hollingsworth at Legal Aid of Marin and others here today. And I know how to listen to community members. This initiative was initiated and largely led by grassroots community organizers who successfully built a coalition of support by several respected organizations that are also here on the call today. What I realized through this work is that on the face of it, it appears that the state law offers tenant protections, but in reality, there are loopholes being taken advantage of. And what became really clear to me was the inequity of it all. The vast majority of our community in Fairfax, 71%, are financially vulnerable, earning below 80% of the county's area median income. This is a population least able to absorb the financial impact of being displaced. And rental property owners continue to build equity and enjoy the price or cost stability that a mortgage provides, with consistent payments due over time, whereas renters do not have the same cost consistency or security in terms of rent predictability. And I think our new laws offer a framework for renter stability and thus community stability. Our recent policies establish school year eviction protections for educators and students, protections for tenants who are elderly, disabled, or terminally ill. They also ensure tenants have the right to return to their unit if they were evicted due to no fault of their own, and if their unit becomes available. These do not exist in the current state law protections. So in jest, I refer to these policies as keeping Fairfax funky, but in all seriousness, I see this as equity policy and part of a multi-pronged strategy to combat homelessness. It's about recognizing the economic conditions and doing what we can to prevent displacement of our community members. And I really appreciate all of you and your work. And I know that myself and Vice Mayor Cutrano, who I partnered with on these policies, are really happy to share our experience and partner and support you in any way. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for sharing your experience and your leadership of actually implementing some of the programs that we're talking about. So thank you.
Well, thank you for helping us with the data, Lily. Your team was fantastic.
Thank you. Lucy?
Good morning, everyone. Very honored to be here with all these other very smart people that get it when it comes to housing in Marin. So I am a senior attorney at Legal Aid of Marin, and I focus on housing and homeless policy. And it's no secret that a majority of our resources are dedicated to keeping tenants housed. It's also no secret, I'm speaking up all the time about this, that we are rarely successful because, as Mayor Hellman noted, that there are huge gaps in state law. And I remember Assembly Member Chu, who authored that law back in 2019. Once it had passed, he had told a group of us that it's not good enough. It's the best that we could do. And you're really going to have to work locally to strengthen these. So, that has been what I have been marinating in for the past few years since that law passed. Our clients are overwhelmingly seniors, persons with disabilities, and communities of color. And we can't fight an eviction if the tenant can no longer afford rent, or if the landlord is evicting to make changes to their property or get out of the business altogether. More often than not, we are having that difficult discussion with our clients about what a soft landing might look like. And that is moving away from Marin and their support system, moving into already overcrowded apartments, or even moving into cars and tents. And so we are seeing firsthand this acceleration of the loss of Marin's naturally occurring affordable housing. And as Lily and Liz noted in their presentation and needs assessment, we're really thankful that the county also recognizes this crisis for renters. That is not the case across California. And the housing element draft, it highlights the need for these critical housing preservation policies and programs. And so it seems that, we're already, we don't have that tension that other counties have about, we all understand the needs, we understand the crisis. And so how do we work together to implement those policies and programs? We did work closely with the town of Fairfax the past 8 months, and we really hope those bold measures, which were to us very courageous, gets replicated throughout Marin. But we need those voices from the community to lead that process. People get sick of hearing from me, and I've been doing policy for a long time. And I used to think that my job was to take the voices of my clients and take them to the policymakers and get those changes. I'd say that, in the past year, I've completely flipped as far as I'm not the one that should be doing that. It's the tenants and the people that are most affected. They need to tell me what to do. They need to tell me how to do it. And I should be sitting back and just creating a space for those that are most affected to speak up one way or another. And so I'm not going to go into my fellow panelists, and Lily and Liz have done a great job at describing the crisis. But really, I'll just say, this is a call to action, that how do we empower those tenants, the most vulnerable, the most housing, the people that are facing this instability on a daily basis, and hear from them about how to create these programs and policies that will address it.
Great. Thank you, Lucy. Thanks for your work on supporting tenants. And I went out of order. We're going back to Laurel Hill. Laurel, you want to unmute yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Lily. Yes, I'm Laurel Hill. I'm the Director of Safety Net Services at Community Action Marin. And we're also working with the same people that Lucy was just talking about, that are the most vulnerable, the most challenged. And so, Community Action Marin as an agency just really wants to be at the forefront of advocating for more affordable housing and protecting our existing affordable housing, because what we're seeing, we assist people with rent and utilities. We have a homeless outreach team, and what we're seeing is, like, just last month we had over 150 families come to us who couldn't pay their rent, couldn't pay their utilities, and our homeless outreach team is, I think they have a caseload of about 125 people, and about 10% might be in line to get some kind of subsidized housing voucher. And the frustration that the staff shares, the part they dislike most about their job, is they feel they're out there, they're working, they're really proud of the work that the people that they're working with are doing. But then at the end of the day, they say, well, I don't have anything to give them. I have no good news. We can't find something that they can afford. And when we provide one-time rental assistance, one of the things that we ask people is, okay, how are you going to be able to pay your rent next month? And just one example, somebody said, well, I'm going to get a part-time job. But then I looked at the application, and this was an 88-year-old man who was legally blind. So that's obviously not a viable option. And that's just really sad that people that are living on Social Security, their rent, as was earlier mentioned, the rent keeps going up, but their income isn't going up. And we are seeing more and more seniors coming in, people living in their cars, people coming in with financial plans that are just completely unrealistic. And, and I know a lot of that has been said here. My own dad is 87 years old, and after 60 years in Fairfax, he just moved to Butte County because we figured out that he could live for 16 years longer if he stayed in Chico than in Marin. And he's somebody that has the resources to actually make a decision like that and say, okay, I don't want to have to put an expiration date on my life because I'm going to run out of money. And so I know that we don't have a lot of time, but just want to, put out there, those are the people that we're seeing every day, and they're working families, they're young people that have nowhere to go, and we're just, and the number of people that are housing challenged is just really continuing to go up and up. And when you hear about the, home ownership is absolutely not ever going to be a realistic idea for most of the people that we're working with. But even renting an apartment that's meant for the number of people that are in their family isn't really an option for people either. So thank you for giving me a moment to talk about the people that we're working with.
Thank you, Laurel. Thanks for your work with all of our vulnerable communities and Cam's work and your sharing your personal story. Now I'm going to turn it to Stacy. Go ahead, Stacy.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. My name is Stacy Lauman, and I work for the Community Land Trust Association of West Marin. We're also called CLAM. It's a little easier. And CLAM is also a member of a collaborative community-based housing organizations in West Marin, including Bolinas Community Land Trust, the San Geronimo Valley Affordable Housing Association, and the Stinson Affordable Housing Committee. So I'm working, and I'm talking here today about CLAM's work, but I also have experience with our collaborators that work in those community-based organizations as well. So I'm happy to be here and share a little bit about what we're experiencing. We're a housing provider. So CLAM owns and operates 18 rental units in Point Reyes Station, Inverness, and Stinson Beach. And we also have 2 ownership homes that are affordably owned. And so what we do is we look to within the community to figure out how can we collaborate with our community partners and community members to provide more safe, affordable housing within the small villages around West Marin. West Marin is similar to the eastern side of Marin in that housing is expensive everywhere, land is expensive everywhere. And it's different from the west side of Marin in that much of West Marin is also governed by the Coastal Commission and the coastal zone and the regulations that are additive essentially to the county's regulatory process. So there are some real physical challenges that we meet on a daily basis when it comes to providing new housing. But first, I want to identify some of the opportunities that I think there are in West Marin for housing. One is that because most of our projects are small, there is a really high level of local support for what we're doing. I think that the projects are not visually impactful when there's something new. And so there's a reduced level of stress, I think, when we go through the review process. Additionally, I think because the communities are small, people really feel the displacement that is happening to their friends and neighbors and service workers and everyone. Because people are so intimately connected on a human level there's so much support for more housing in West Marin, and that is completely refreshing and really delightful. One of the other opportunities is that, there are small villages throughout West Marin, and within those there are single family homes, et cetera, that can have ADUs added to them at a relatively reasonable cost. And so what we're doing is trying to work with property owners to see how we can collaborate on an individual basis with other people to bring housing from a nonprofit and private partnership to work with private owners to bring income restricted ADUs to individual properties. Another thing we're working on is the challenges with ag worker housing. We know that that's a significant challenge due to the zoning out in the community, but I also think that there's like a larger groundswell of support for solving the problem of it's just multiple. One of them is existing housing in the ag sector is substandard often. The other one is that, we all want to make sure that people are not driving too far, increasing greenhouse gases. We want to make sure that families are stable. So how can we improve ag housing to protect that element of the economy and also make lives and communities more stable?
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Can I just go
Yeah,
on?
yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Challenges that we're facing though is that, as I talked about, land is extremely expensive everywhere. The regulatory framework is difficult. And I think one other thing that's challenging, and maybe I want to look at it as an opportunity, and I don't know how to do that yet, is that when you look at large projects, there are a lot of state resources, federal resources for the typical affordable housing project. But when you're looking at small sites project, those sources are very different and varied and few. So I look forward to collaborating with the county more on trying to identify what kind of sources of funding could fund these little infill projects in rural places like West Marin. And lastly, I just want to say that I think from a community nonprofit perspective, from a community affordable housing provider perspective, we're really aligned with the goals in the housing element, particularly around addressing displacement and improving inclusiveness in our communities.
Thank you, Stacy. Thanks for bringing that West Marin perspective. And sorry, I went out of order. We're going back to Linda Jackson. Go ahead, Linda. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Lily, and First Five for hosting this event. I'm really honored to be here with these leaders across Marin about this topic. I'm here with a couple of hats on. I'm president of the San Rafael School Board and director of the Aging Action Initiative. So from the viewpoint of 67 years, starting out as a daughter, and then a mother, and now a grandmother, I see so many through lines of housing imperatives across the lifespan. The county's housing element takes a close look at the housing needs in Marin. I want to highlight a couple of these through the lens of aging equity. In unincorporated Marin, the median age is 47. But in some places, like where Stacy Lauman is working, in Central Coast of West Marin, the median age is 65. And with longer lives, seniors in their 80s and 90s are finding that Social Security does not keep up with rising rents and costs of their housing. And immigrants who arrived 40 years ago are now retiring and finding they don't have the income to retire in the security they deserve. Low-income, vulnerable elders like Laurel Hill talked about are aging into poverty and homelessness. And we know that school districts still have vacancies in their schools halfway through the school year. I want to highlight also the great overlap of need between younger people and older people, and that is for caregivers. Caregivers are needed across the lifespan for people of all ages Childcare centers, people of all ages with disabilities, and senior living facilities are having a hard time finding caregivers to hire. We're in a housing crisis. We import workers every day from other counties that contributing to the destruction of our planet. And as Mike Blakely talked about, there's a dearth of affordable housing for low-income households and for moderate and higher income folks like doctors and pharmacists. That's why the lines are so long at the pharmacies today. The county's housing plan is a start to address this housing crisis. A key solution, in addition to effective protections for renters, is to increase the supply of housing, especially smaller units in community centers for young adults and older people who want to downsize out of their family-sized homes. If we had the same ratio of accessory dwelling units as Vancouver, British Columbia, which is a wonderful city, Marin would have 34,000 ADUs. We can start by adding far more than what our local jurisdictions are planning for. The county says they'll approve 300 a year in 8 years. Why not 300 a year? Another solution is co-housing, and that's listed in the county's plan for seniors. But if we had the same ratio of co-housing as Denmark does, we would have 17 of these across our counties to choose from. And they're for people of all ages who want to live in a mixed age community. We need to have single room occupancy units. These are small rooms with baths. They're ideal for low-income seniors and singles, and they should be by right in commercial areas. The county's plan includes also the scope and reach of home share programs so renters can be matched with homeowners looking to rent a room. But this is not just for older people. Families also need to rent rooms, perhaps to a grandma or to an au pair. The county's housing element is a plan, and we hope the plan will work, but hope is not a plan. We have to follow through with the implementation programs, and the AAI network, the Aging Action Initiative Network, some of whom are here today with me, stands ready to help. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you, Linda, and thanks for bringing that lens to the conversation. Let's hear from Bob Pendoli next.
Thanks, Lily. I'm a member of the Marin Environmental Housing Collaborative. We call ourselves MEC. We're a multidisciplinary consortium of advocates that generate support for projects and policies that advance affordable housing, environmental integrity, and social justice. And because I'm chair of the committee this year, it became my job to read all the housing elements in the county. An interesting challenge. And I'd have to say, I just have incredible admiration for the county's work. They've really led the way on this. This housing element is extraordinary. It sets a benchmark for the rest of us. But the good news is reading the other housing elements that have come out, so far what they really reflect is a changing political environment in this county. See much less of the knee-jerk opposition to development and particularly to affordable housing. And in fact, I think what is a lot of strong and sincere support amongst elected folks to increase the supply of affordable housing. So, but the question today is what's going to happen next? When I was asked if I'd be willing to talk about this, my first reaction is, well, what's going to happen next is not much. And that's not for the lack of effort by the county and some of the other jurisdictions, but I think it's, the changing economy. We're in the economist debate, but we seem to be in at least a semi-recession. You look at the long list of really good projects that have been approved by the city of San Rafael, for example, most of them aren't moving forward. And as I understand it, it's about the economy. It's the cost of construction, it's the cost of supplies. So what's this mean? In some ways, at least based on trends we're seeing in some parts of California, this may actually be opening up new opportunities for affordable housing. In a few places, we're seeing the nonprofit affordable housing developers picking up some of these approved projects because they have, sometimes they have funding from grant sources and from low-income housing tax credits. So From the perspective of MEC, this is a good thing. This is a difficult economy, in some ways creating incentives to build affordable housing. But there's another aspect to this as well. The situation's never cut and dried, right? It never goes just one direction. Also looking at San Rafael, I see that they've got 3 SB 35 projects. These are projects that qualify for state programs that say that they simply must be approved. They are approved without public hearings. They get approved in a process that's similar to applying for a building permit. One of them, for example, is an 8-story building in downtown. I have great enthusiasm for 8-story buildings downtown. This creates opportunity with minimal impact on the environment. On the other hand, because these projects are eligible for what's called by right approval, the city can't go through its design review process where they make an effort at least to try to get a project that's a complement to the neighborhood. And I'm concerned that this can result in projects that kind of backfire in a way, create opposition. There are approaches, and again, the county's leading the way. This next topic is wonky, but I guarantee you're going to be hearing about it. Cities and counties do have the option to develop what are called objective design and development standards. This is a very wonky subject, but it involves developing very technical standards for reviewing these projects that are exempt from discretionary review. And I hope the cities will follow the county's lead and really jump into this and develop their own objective design and development standards so that we can assure that these opportunities for more affordable housing turn out looking the way they need to, so they look great. Because it's a matter of continuing to develop this momentum of support for affordable housing in Marin County. The other important trend, I hope
Bob, I just want to know that you're at time. So if you
oh,
want
okay.
to-
I had some other great thoughts, but that's fine. I'll catch you all next time.
I'm sure you did.
Thanks,
And thank
Lily.
you for reading all the housing elements. That is a worthy task. Thank you. Suzanne Sadowski.
Thank you, Lily, and thank you everybody else for this amazing seminar that is educating all of us. I'm not going to repeat all of the issues that have been raised by the previous speakers because they all of them apply to the community in which I live, which is the San Geronimo Valley. San Geronimo Valley is geographically in the center of Marin County, but it's what I would call a semi-rural community. It's not in Fairfax, funky Fairfax, although we get a little bit of overlap. And it's not on the coastal area. So we have, and we're definitely right in the middle, and we're right in the middle of all of these issues having to do with the housing crisis. I know of families from farms who have had to leave their homes and their family homes that they've been living in for a generation because they could no longer work on the farm because the older dad couldn't work on the farm, so he lost his housing. I've known families where families like mine, I'm able to stay in my valley and my daughter is able to stay in the valley, but her children who are in college now or high school, where are they going to live? So I'm really concerned about community stability. I think the San Geronimo Valley is in many ways could be an incubator of some innovative ways of dealing with some of the housing crisis by looking at properties that are maybe on religious institution land, looking at public property to see what kinds of housing we can create for workers. Part of the problem is not just that we don't have enough workers, but we don't have enough workers who have paid enough money to live in the housing that's available. So we have an income divide. I'm in addition to being on the board of the San Geronimo Valley Affordable Housing Association, I'm also on the Commission on Aging for the county. And so I'm very aware of the issues affecting seniors, particularly the digital divide that affects many seniors who have limited capacity for accessing information, but also the problem that seniors have because they can't find enough people to help them in their household management. They need help around the house, and to be able to find people who are going to be able to do that work and who travel 50 miles to get to the job, which is a low-paying job to begin with, is a real serious problem. So we need housing across the board at low, middle, and we certainly have enough higher income housing right now. So we've also been affected by the fact, I just want to mention a couple of things. I know 35% of the houses in the San Geronimo Valley are 75 years or older. That means many of them have restricted covenants on their deeds because you couldn't buy a house in the San Geronimo Valley or rent to a person of color in the San Geronimo Valley until that law was changed. It also means that some of the houses, these older houses, are using wood burning stoves, which are affecting the environment. So if we look at all of these components together and we see how we can, take all of these imaginative and amazing ideas and begin to put them into place, I think we really need a lot of community support. And we need to really look at the elements of the various codes. So the San Geronimo Valley Affordable Housing Association is moving to become a community land trust. And so that community land trust idea, I think, is a way that we can preserve and maintain housing that will be removed from the commercial market because we have very desirable places to live. People will buy houses when they can. And even if they come and just stay there during their vacation time, that's their home. But unless we do something creative and create community, land, and trust is the way we're going to be able to solve this problem. I know
Great.
all the time, right?
Thank you, Suzanne, and thanks for your you keep your hope that and creative ideas for moving forward. I think we're going to hear from somebody from Parent Voices. I'm sorry, I don't have the speaker's name. Are you? Is it Vicky? Is there somebody from Parent Voices here?
It's gonna be me, Amaranta.
Okay, oh great, Amaranta, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amaranta Silva. I'm a parent leader of Parent Voices California. Many of you probably heard about us, but for those who don't, I would like to share that through grassroots organizing and leadership development, we activate and center the wisdom of parents to transform childcare and ensure all the systems that impact our families are just, fair, and inclusive. That's why we are here. Childcare will be always our main focus, but we know that we need to fix other systems to ensure that our children can be successful in their lives. Having a safe, stable place to live is crucial for a student's development and educational success. Latinx, Black, Indigenous, and ET students are disproportionately likely to experience homelessness. Marin renters, especially people of color and those with low incomes, are struggling to meet housing costs. Most of our parents are providers spend between 50 and 70% of their income just in rent. Also, 50% of them share their homes because they can afford to pay the rent by themselves. By removing barriers to affordable housing development, setting a rent control program, prioritizing meaningful funding to expand the supply, and creating more accessible programs for renters, we can make a difference in our community. And with that being said, I just want to share that we have a bunch of parents that live like in areas that they're like already saturated, that they're unsafe for them, that they're struggling with the pay of the rent. And we want to share like the story of one of our parents today. We know that we're short on time, but I just would like to pass the bus to Veronica Duarte. She's one of our mom leaders. And while she gets connected, I just want to thank you to Michelle and First Five and the county for having this space open for the community also to share. Veronica, ¿está lista?
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Veronica Duarte. I am also in the parent voice, parent leader of Marin. I have I have 4 children. I live in Novato, and I live in Marin County for 14 years. For me, the housing is very important. I use you like for many of members. I live in fear of the rent increase. The big part of salary is to cover the rent, but this is a lot of stress for my kids. We are here because I like all of you. I want to make a change. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you for sharing. And just before we end up with our time, I just want to share that we also echo the comments on the chat where we need to create housing for kids with special needs and old adults, and also for providers. We need to save our providers and our teachers. Our kids need them. Like, we are a circle and we have to work together. So we hope to open the door to the community and be more involved on this kind of events. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Wow, what an amazing group of speakers. I really wish that I didn't talk so much and that we could have heard more from all of you. Like, that was amazing. And I really appreciated that depth and experience from people who are experiencing it to a mayor who's making policy, like that whole range of it. So that was amazing. And I think that next time we should hear a lot less from me and more from you all. With that, we're going to use the rest of our time to answer some questions, and we're going to start with Kevin Carroll. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'll go ahead and ask your question, please. Kevin? Okay, while Kevin is working on getting unmuted, I'm going to ask Craig to go ahead and unmute himself. And Craig, you want to go ahead and ask your question while Kevin gets himself unmuted?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I've been in the industry for construction for since 1978. I've worked with Linda Jackson when I was a Park and Rec commissioner with the city of Santa Fe for many years. And I appreciate the time she was there with the code she helped develop for infill housing. I believe infill housing is most a viable subject for affordable housing. The other subject I feel is really good that should be addressed. All affordable housing should be 100% accessible. Architects, contractors can make these places with ease by doing 100% accessible. The hallways, the entry, the inside of the units, that way, no matter what age you are, no matter what your condition is, you can facilitate as a residence there. The other thing is, these structures should be 100% concrete. Stay away from wood structures. Wood structures do nothing but present maintenance hazards. Continuous maintenance. The place that's being developed down there that Marin gave to former Worcester Stops, which is now Vivillon, for the housing structure there for seniors, is great. It's a solid concrete structure. When it's done and completed, that will have little or no maintenance, and it will present a very nice place for people to reside in. So that's my presentation. Please utilize affordable housing and also.
Great. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
I also just wanted to note that if anyone has a question in Spanish or English, you please go ahead and answer, and we can have that translated. Kevin Carroll, you still have your hand up. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? While he's working on that, is there anybody else who had a question? Aaron, let's go to you.
Well, I was a presenter, but I just really want to share my appreciation to Veronica for speaking out with her personal story. I just, the best advocacy is always from the actual community and not from the advocates. So just wanted to really thank you, Veronica, for taking time out of your day to share with us today.
Thank you. I echo that. Janice?
Yes, I just want to get on a list so that they're in the process of being considered for one of the new housing.
So let's see, I'm thinking maybe if you could, do you have an email address, Janice?
Yeah,
If you could put that in the chat, then we'll reach out to you and put you in touch with some lists that may be available. If you could put your email in the chat, we'll reach out to you. Okay, I'm going last.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for being here. Kevin? Okay, if you can unmute yourself, Kevin, go ahead. Is there any other questions that people have? We have a few more minutes. We have 10 more minutes. So any other questions or comments that people wanted to make?
I see Janice has her hand up.
Janice, we just did her.
Oh, sorry.
Things. Yeah, thank you.
Buenos días.
Oh, sí, go ahead.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Irene. Irene, soy madre soltera de 4 niños. Estudiantes de Davison Middle School y San Rafael High School. De Davison Middle School y San Rafael High School. Y quiero decir que la vivienda realmente ha sido un reto para mí. Ha sido súper difícil y hasta traumático poder conseguir una vivienda porque no calificaba para un estudio porque la cantidad de personas no me lo permitía. Solo soy un adulto trabajando para 4 niños.
Edgardo, do you want to?
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Y lo que estaba ganando el sueldo, aún teniendo 2 trabajos, no era suficiente para calificar para un apartamento de 2 o 3 recámaras. Es demasiado.
A ver, permíteme, Irene, déjeme traducir. Irene was saying that she's the mother of 3 children, and looking for an apartment has been very difficult, and it's been kind of traumatic. Even with 2 jobs, it's been a difficult process. Continúe, Irene.
Sí, entonces quisiera abogar también por muchas más personas que vivimos así, que rentamos un cuarto y no tenemos, las oportunidades son muy limitadas por las regulaciones de vivienda. Ese es mi resumen de lo que he vivido buscando vivienda.
Yeah, it's been very difficult. She wants to advocate for people that are in similar positions that, looking for a room has been a difficult process, and she wants to advocate for more people that are in similar positions looking for homes.
Thank you for sharing your story, and thanks for bringing it, for advocating for other people who are in similar situations. Thank you. Is there any other comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Rami.
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning. And I work at Davidson Middle School at the Family Center with newcomers. I'm very happy to be here with Miss Irene de Leon, who could share her story as her. I experienced the situations of many families like her, which were struggle. They don't have, they come with a dream to have a better education and life for their kids. And when part of my role is to provide them resources, and housing is one of the ones that they ask the most. And I feel like I'm failing them when I don't provide them something that is very useful and where they could navigate on the system. When I provide them a link and I say, I'm very sorry, the link with places that you could ask for are mainly in English and not in Spanish, and I cannot get the time to, call for them because at the same time, I want to empower them to find resources on their own. So it's real. The need is there, and I'm grateful that it's a plan, but hopefully it could be done quickly. And I know it's just better, is to say it's easier than done, but I am glad that you are able to hear the voice of the people who is experiencing the needs, and me as a provider here at the schools and seeing newcomers and their experiences and their struggles. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really important to hear, like, we talk about housing in this very kind of theoretical, wonky way, and it's really important, I think, to connect and hear your real stories. So thank you. Michelle?
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to thank all the speakers and Irene and Veronica, especially for sharing their personal stories. I think that's really important. As Stacy was mentioning, one reason that that affordable housing, some things might be easier in West Marin is because of the small size, and people know those in need as their friends and neighbors. And as I wrote in the chat, if we could think of everyone facing these challenges as friends and neighbors and care for them in that way, try to help people get, find assistance in a caring way, hopefully maybe Marin could do this differently than other counties. And one thing of hearing those two personal stories, I just wonder and hope if we could find a way of capturing other stories out there. And maybe it is like from Romy and from other schools, having people that work with the families, if they can help share the stories. We've heard rumors for years about, families co-renting apartments secretly because they're not supposed to, but they've got to do it for affordability. We've heard rumors about people, renting out their dining room and kids are sleeping under a dining room table, or, they rent their sofa to an individual who, that's how they can afford, and they pay a couple $100 a month to sleep on someone's sofa. There are probably many more, and I think it would just be valuable if we could find a way to capture and share those. But thanks again to everyone for speaking, to the county for all the work done on the housing element. Hopefully your thankless job got a little bit of thanks today. We appreciate that, and thanks for managing the Zoom today.
Thank you, Michelle. It looks like let's try to get a couple more questions in. We have 4 more minutes. Let's go to Marco.
Hi, thank you, and hello everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces. I'm Marco Berger. I'm the Advocacy and Civic Engagement Manager at the Multicultural Center of Marin, and I facilitate the Canal Community Resilience Council, where I hear a lot from the residents that live in the canal and other parts, low-income immigrant residents that have similar issues that we heard tonight. People have rents going up, looking for third jobs and more housemates so they can afford the rents that are going up. And they always ask, why isn't there more affordable housing? Why isn't there more affordable housing? And one meeting I was in, I heard, well, the developers who are going to build housing don't want to do affordable housing. They're not going to make any money out of it. So I suppose there was a mandate at some point to do a certain percentage of affordable housing when you're building new. I don't know if that's still in effect or not, but because there's not a profit for the developers, then they decide not to build, and then the mandate of building, this mandate that we have from the state to build more housing is a problem, is an issue. So again, I think it's really a deeper problem of, depending on profit in order to have housing come to our needy populations. And I just wanted to reflect that that's some of the needs that I hear from the community. And then I'm just wondering how we can all work together. I liked what Michelle just said, if you look at somebody that is your neighbor and you care for them just as much as you care for your own family, then perhaps we can solve these issues. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Marco. Amaranta?
Yes, thank you again. I just think it is really important. One of our members, they cannot join today because she's taking care of her son that it is sick, and I'm gonna try to read her testimony very quick. I know we're just on time, so I'm just gonna try to do it as quick as I can. So my name is Miriam. I'm a mother of 4 children, 14, 6, 2.5 years and 9 months. We live in a trailer in Nevada. Not because we want, just because the system has left us behind. Although my husband works from 6 in the morning until 7 in the afternoon, the money is not enough to save the almost $8,000 that are needed to move to a better place. On top of that, we have to verify that we earn almost 3 times what we ask us for rent. The cheapest apartments start at $2,800 for 2 bedrooms. When we call to ask for information, the first thing that they ask me is how many people are going to live in there. When I tell them my situation, they quickly disqualify me. They tell me that can be done, that I need to ask for a 3-bedroom apartment, which starts on $3,500. With my husband's job and a few jobs that I can work while I care for my youngest son who has special needs, we cannot access such as an expensive income. Basically, we will work only for the rent. The place where I live is not only small for us, also because of the weather, sometimes children spend sick long periods. It is difficult because there are no programs that support families like mine, who work and strive to offer something better to their children. That's why I want to ask all the people who are here to create a support plan for the people that we are renting. Somehow we have to ensure that there are better housing opportunities and that they are really accessible to everyone. Thank you. Thank you again for giving me the time.
Thank you. With that, I think we're going to wrap it up. We're at 11:30. I appreciate everybody's time. And if you have other questions, then please reach out and contact us or Michelle with anything. And I really am grateful for everybody who shared their time, particularly the people who shared their personal stories. So thank you and have a good day.